hello. I have just finished my 5th conversation with Steve. I am wrapping these up. And it's, the combination of excitement for what will come next, who will be in season 3, and oh no, won't I do this with Steve anymore? And lucky for me, I will continue to talk to Steve because we're in the same creative community. He pops up in the Tankespjärn community, the monthly Zooms that we have over there in the Patreon page. So if you want to get a chance to hang out with Steve and Matthew and Enma, they are also regulars there. Check out the Tankespjärn community. You can find that on tankespjärn.com. But we have again gone down the rabbit hole of doing the work, the inner work. And I share a recent experience of mine, and Steve shares a recent experience. It's the same and completely different all at once, which, is fascinating. So join us and Pop the Cat, who will be a presence throughout this episode as he's currently housebound because he had a little wound that had to be tended. And so he's wearing a collar and forbidden to step outside. And he's quite frustrated, which you will hear in this episode. So I hope that won't mess up the experience too much for you. So dive in.
So how are you?
How am I? I have been in a continuous whirlwind, I think. I have found new things about myself, sort of going deeper. And I don't know if you can hear that annoying noise.
I hear a dog, yes.
No, you hear a cat in a collar because
that was a cat?
He has a collar on his head and it itches behind his ear, and so he's itching his ear, only he's itching the collar.
Right.
Because
right.
he had a boil that had to be lanced. So we'll see.
I see.
Yesterday, I had a conversation for 2 hours in the morning, and he was all over this place. He was just crazy because he's not been allowed out for 8 days.
Oh, so that's really hard for him.
That's really hard for him. Yes, he's bored. But I am good, and I've been in a whirlwind. And it's interesting to see what happens in me and how all of a sudden I'm in a new, I come at the world from another point, another level, another coordinates, another set of coordinates. That's the thing. Where all of a sudden I look around at things that I've known, and all of a sudden, maybe not. Do I believe this anymore? Does this seem correct or serving or whatever? Here he comes. Pop the cat, that is.
It's a pig ginger puss.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I see why he's got to have the cone, yeah.
Yeah. But
he'd be licking that.
He would be licking his wound, yeah. But he's a sweetheart. But he can hopefully just lie down here, be quiet. But it's been quite, it's a little bit unusual to get that in such a deep sense. Last week, I was a couple of days at my mom's place with Pop the cat because of this. And I was working on my book on fear, which is, a collection of blog posts that I've written about fear that I'm now expanding upon and adding on to, etc. And I'm reading this stuff and I'm going, is this true to me today?
Oh my. So you feel like you might need to revise parts of the book?
Yes.
Oh my.
I started to write in a parenthesis in one of the pieces fairly early in it that, or maybe not. My kid goes, oh man, this is going to be such a weird book. Here she is all, affirming and this is the way it is. And then, or maybe the complete opposite, So, yeah.
Wow.
It's me. What about you?
Well, it's kind of funny because it's similar, at least in one regard, and maybe it's because of the time of year that I think many of us are having kind of this experience. I think there's a seasonal cycle for how we operate inside too. But my inner landscape that I explore with the parks and things when I'm doing my IFS work has a very definite geography, and it's a certain size. I get a sense for how big it is. And about, I guess it was a week ago, whatever. I blew it up.
You blew it up?
I didn't mean to blow it up, but I blew it up. I had an experience where I was sitting with two of the characters. I was sitting with Dreams and Rust Lady, who is also Wisdom. And I was just feeling my oats. I was feeling good. I was like, let's go somewhere. Let's do something. Let's make something. Let's unmake something. And they looked at me on that last line, and it looked at each other actually across me because they were sitting one on each side, and they kind of nodded their heads. And then we were suddenly on the beach at a particular location where a lot of things happen. And there was this gap in the dunes where there was, so obviously it's like construction equipment had gone in, and it was all torn up and rutted, and I was furious. And I just marched away from them into this gap in the dunes, like, what the hell is going on? And I was going to go find out. And I, encountered this bulldozer-like machine with huge pincer jaws that was just like grabbing trees, ripping them out of the ground, throwing them behind it, and just clearing this big open space. And I was like, no, we're not. And the machine actually turned around and faced me. I walked up to it and climbed up into it, turned it off and pulled the keys out, and just sat there with it ticking as it cooled.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly this angry man comes up the path that I came up. He's dressed in a suit and everything, and he's this tall gentleman, and but he's plainly pissed. And he comes up into the clearing, and he's like, you don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, this is not okay, as I gesture at the wreckage. And we had a conversation, and I came to find out that he's the puppeteer. He's the guy that's trying to always keep me safe by keeping me, my ambitions small and my hopes, at a level that could be attained and all this. And I'm like, but what's this? And he said, well, this would just be all weeds. This would be ambitions run amok. This would be things that would get up out of where I can't control them. And I'm like, oh. I said, you're not getting these keys back. And he was like, I don't care. There's more of these. And suddenly I realized that there were a lot more of these, maybe dozens. And I was like, what the hell? And so I turned into my crow form that I can in that space, and I started pulling these pins out of the roof of the machine, and it turned into this pile of bones. And he's kind of astonished because he wasn't expecting me to do that. And I just fly off, north in my space, and can see another clearing up ahead. And for 5 or 6 different, I won't give all the details, but for 5 or 6 different of these clearings, I encounter completely different kinds of machines that are doing the same thing. They're just keeping the world small. And I wrecked 5 of them. And on the sixth one, it was just burning. It was just burning all around the edges. It was like a ring fire that was just growing out. And, I went up and pissed on it, which made a terrible smell, but put a small piece of it out. And then the land itself rose up like a wave of sand around this whole thing and put the rest of the fire out. And I was like, all right, about time you woke up. And then I hear the next machine up get wrecked on its own. I hear it get crumpled basically by something. The land is doing it. And then I hear another one even further. And then I realize that the land is just going to take out all the rest of them. And so I'm just sitting there quietly thinking about this. And I realized that I'd obviously awoken something inside myself in some way, and I didn't have any way to explain it, and I don't understand. And as we've talked about before, I've gone from needing to understand what the things inside mean to more just raw actions that I won't necessarily know what they mean, but they're doing the work. And the following day, the land was just different. It was much larger. It's kind of scary large now. It's like it went from being an island of somewhat manageable size. I could walk across it maybe in a day, the narrow way, and maybe could walk the whole length of it in a couple of days. That's about how big it was. Now it's like, the coast of Oregon. I mean, it's like, I have no idea how big this is now. And the trees it's not dunes anymore with, brushy kind of wet, it's hemlocks, and they're huge. They're like the size of redwoods. And I'm like, so this is how big it could be inside. It's so big, I haven't been able to find anybody. I have not met anybody yet. I've been wandering around in it for 2 days. I can't find anybody. So it's just different.
Oh, wow. You have no idea how much of this resonates in me. And it's, I have not been reading your stuff in the creative community. As you can probably tell, I'm guessing you've probably written about some of this. I haven't basically done anything in there for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Now your camera went all fuzzy on me.
Is it back?
There you go.
It's weird. I don't know why it does that. It does not do it on the other computer at all. It only does it on this one.
Oh, well, it just wants to make sure that we know that there's this, another entity around or something. But in therapy session a couple of weeks ago, the puppeteer came up and we started talking about Pinocchio.
Oh, wow.
And Dominic told me to, watch Pinocchio, watch the Disney movie, or find a couple of the, the artistic books in the library or something, read it, watch it. So I watched Pinocchio a couple of weeks ago, and then we had this long session about Pinocchio, the puppeteer, and the keeping the world small. It's like, it's just all of what you're saying. It's just, yeah, me too. Takes on different imagery or form, but spot on. The very same. Because in the session, it's Wednesday today, in the session Monday, I was again back in this feeling of smallness, of being, there's the Ukrainian artist who has these steel silhouettes of two people sitting back to back, big, and then inside them there are the little child in each of them facing each other, where the backs, it's like, that's me. Speaking about keeping the world small, it's like there's this little me inside that wants to go out, but I've created this small world where, stay within this, don't go outside, don't expand. And we saw kind of two very definitive traits. The one trait is, it is not safe to be me. Which is one reason why I want to stay within. because it's not safe to be me. And the other one is, you're not worthy. And those two, help each other out to keep me small, to keep
yeah.
my world small, to keep me playing the small game. And I'm going, fuck. And so what you're saying is just exactly the same thing. It only takes on other forms, and it makes me wonder, okay, is this a seasonal thing? Is it now, spring is coming on this half of the earth? Is it something new is growing? Is that it?
Yeah, I don't know. There's some in the world away. Well, two things. The puppeteer has. I mean, one of the things the puppeteer told me when he was confronting me there on the machine at the beginning of that vision was, I said to him, "Oh, well, when I recognized who he was, you're the puppeteer." He nodded, and I said, "The manager works for you, doesn't he?" Because the manager is a character I've encountered before that's a little easier to run into in my space, who has run much of my life. There have been years when the manager was in charge, and it's hard to be married to me when I'm in the manager.
Mm.
And he said, "Yeah, he's my hand sometimes. He does my work." Very casually, very offhand, like, yeah, he's a guy. And so when you said these two things, it is not safe to be me and I'm not worthy. What I immediately pictured is the game of keep away. I don't know if you have that game in Sweden, right? Two people are throwing a ball back and forth, and the person in the middle is trying to intercept the ball any way they can, right?
Yep.
And so the whole object of the game is to get the person to run back and forth in between. And as they're about to get close enough to this person to potentially block the next throw, you throw the ball to the other guy,
Yeah.
right? Or the other girl. And that's what these two can do, right? You can be ready to kind of wrangle with one of them and maybe get some purchase on it, and then the other one rears its head instead. And you're in that mode. But you're not dealing with, you're not ready for that. So, you're back and forth between them. And so you never beat any of them or get out of
No.
you never get out from between these two people. You never
No.
get the ball.
No.
So there's that. And then there's, okay, I'm doing my usual thing here. I'm forgetting what the other thing is. Oh, the spring thing. So there's in the old smaller land, there was this large flower. It was actually a bud that had come out on the beach. I mean, it's the size of a beach whale. It was a big bud, right? And it has been getting fatter and fatter and getting ready to bloom for like months. And I'm like, what is this? Where is it going? And it's been fed from the meads grove in the center of the space, and it grows every time I get it to rain there, which usually I only can do if I'm facing emotions I don't usually like to face: grief, regret, disappointment, remorse. And I realized that part of what happened and why I got the bigger world is that bud opened, pollinated everything else, and this is the result. I was able to make that grow to a place over the winter where it could create new life and something and impregnate things literally. And now there's all these new things. Since Sunday, I've been working on a short story. I've been so engrossed in it that I've done almost nothing else. I'm almost done with it. I've struggled with the end. And I'm almost done with it. So the first draft anyway. And that's different. I haven't done that in many, many years. When it came along, I just took it and ran with it. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, how it's like, it's fascinating and it's kind of scary and
Yeah.
it's the synchronicity of it, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff going on that I have no clue about. I mean, that's but heck, it feels as if now I am along for the ride in again, in a new way.
Yeah.
In a way, I haven't been able to be ready for this ride before. I wouldn't
Yeah,
have
maybe
been
not.
here
Right.
That's the feeling I have. It's like, okay, because again, I've been, for 20 years doing personal development, explorative work on different levels. I'm getting deeper and deeper in the stack.
Yeah.
Every turn is kind of, going deeper and deeper and deeper. And now it's like I've never been on this level before. I've never been here, and I couldn't have gotten here if I hadn't done the other
Yeah.
levels, right? It's like it is really, you can really gamify personal development that way. It's like, yeah, you do have to meet the big boss of the first level before you can even begin to work the
Yeah.
second level.
Yeah.
And now and
Yeah.
again you die, and then you have to start all over again on level
Yeah.
1. But you know that big boss because you've fought him before, so you can do it. It's a little quicker.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? It's like it's such a perfect analogy for the work. And yesterday I have started up a new book circle with Women Who Run with the Wolves.
I've begun that book too.
And it's 2 circles because there was so many people interested in it. But in one of the pages, she writes, let's see if I can find it. She says, to know her being the wild woman, to know her is an ongoing process, a lifelong process. And that is why this work is an ongoing work, a lifelong work. And it really is, that's my feeling. It is like, yeah, okay, now I'm here doing this work this way on this level. And it will continue. I will sit here in 5 years going, wow, I'm now at a new level. It's like,
Yes.
it will be. Because even though it takes a lot of energy to do the work as deeply and like intently, or, it's like I'm really applying myself to the work now. There are times when it's more in the background. It's not top of mind. It's not top priority. It's not something, but now it is really something that I'm applying myself to. And it's just, it takes energy, but it is so rewarding at the same time in this utterly confusing way, because it's like, I have no clue. How do I, one of the things of this, I have this sense of the little me being inside of the big me, which isn't me playing big, but the skeleton of me, kind of the jailer of me. It's like, so there's the little person that's jailed, and then there's the jailer, and they're both aspects of me. And they're playing the game, and it's a game of hopelessness where I can't get out of it, and I don't know how to do it. And I might as well just stay jailed or stay the jailer, And then now and again, the little person inside of me gets this little spark of hope and goes, maybe. And then the jailer kind of flips the switch and turns off the spark. And they are playing, right? Like what you said with the ball. It's like, it's that. They are in collusion, those two. They're best buddies. They are doing the work because they know precisely what will happen when I get the little spark. You will flick the switch and turn it off. Okay. Then we know how life is. What if the jailer wouldn't turn off the switch? It's like,
Right? Right? Exactly. It's
shit!
like, what would happen? And
what would happen then?
Yes.
Oh!
If you get a panicked feeling, there's a reason for that. Yeah. And I feel like you, that's probably a sign that that's the right move. but making that move, I mean, how do you make that move?
How do you make that move? And
how do
then
you
my
short circuit
analytical
the thing?
self goes on and gets, how do I do that? He's like, maybe I don't have to figure out how, but I would want to know how. Could somebody please hand me the manual? Tell me
Yeah.
what to do, how to
Yes.
do that. It's like, sorry, there is no manual? Shit.
Yeah, we're all one of a kind machines on some
We,
level, and
we are.
or maybe we're very similar, but nobody can tell each of us where the switch is,
No,
so he can
no,
go take his hand or her hand off of it.
yeah. And there he went all blurry again.
Ugh. Am I back? No, am I
Nope,
still blurry?
you're still blurry. Ooh, now. Yep, you're back.
All right.
Mm.
Yeah. So the land being so large that I can't find anybody is like, well, how do I even continue the work?
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't even know how to operate in this new land. So, but I've been dealing with that older space for a year almost. I think I'd have to go back through my notes and look, but I believe it's been that long. Discovering its geography and the way it works and how the different parts play with each other, and um, finding my way around, learning how to interact with people. It's only been the last couple of months that I had encountered what I called the night side, where I was then doing things that made no sense. Like I find this thing here and I carry it to this other part over here, and he takes it and pulls a drawer out of the air and drops it into the drawer and it closes the drawer kind of thing. It's like stuff that makes no sense, stuff you would encounter in dreams. Um, and it's that sort of thing. And I never get any explanation for what's going on or why that mattered or what. Um, there was before the episode with the puppeteer, just before that, I had a much more visceral and horrible encounter where was I was taken to see a creature on the night side, like a spider, who poked a long tentacled finger into my face. I just made the focus go, didn't I? Into my face and pushed my face into myself, turned me inside out, so that I was on the inside of me, looking it up, and I was completely hollow inside. And then up at the very top of my head, there was this cowering little sponge-like thing that was, like a brain, but too small, up at the very top of inside of my head. And it smelled terrible and, like vomit. It was just awful. And I realized I needed to eat it.
Oh,
So
yuck.
it was truly awful. But I did, I ate it, and I managed, because there wasn't anything really inside of me at all. I felt like throwing up or retching, but I couldn't. There was really nothing to do it with. So it was like, I just had the feeling, but nothing. And, and my job was to carry that like that back to the dayside. And I did that. And it's the next day that I had the encounter with the puppeteer and everything blew up. So the I don't know what they are, I don't know why I'm doing this, events seem to be important for things that then maybe do make some sense, or where there is some verbal stuff going on, or I can at least understand a little bit what's going on. I mean, the machines and clearings and stuff, I mean, I got some way of understanding maybe what that meant about the keeping me small, right? So, but other times I get nothing that I can use at all. And I realized something else. I was writing, sitting at the edge of the hemlocks, looking out over this huge set of cleared hills with a large mountain behind that. And I'm like, this place is just huge. And I was just sitting there and I realized, in the old, smaller world, my way of doing things was always to ask the parts I encountered, what do you want me to know or do? And I would ask that question. That's my standard question. And I would wait for an answer. And usually the answer was word. Sometimes it was something that we did. In the new world, I think what I'm supposed to do is it's going to be a gift culture. I'm not going to ask anything. I'm going to give them something. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know what that is, but I get I just gotta have a strong sense that that's what the work is here. And that's what I'm going to try. I haven't done any of it yet, so I have no idea how it's going to go. But yeah, so I really hope that as you are also seeming to be in a larger space and a very maybe slightly confused, not sure how that. I hope that continues to expand, and you find yourself doing really new things.
Mm. 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 I'm fascinated by you doing this, like, self-guided.
I worry about that sometimes. Like, maybe shouldn't someone be spotting me?
Well, I'm more fascinated by both your, the tenacity that you do that for and with yourself, that you actually do it. And then that you actually get some type of like that you do understand any of it, because my feeling is that going to therapy and doing this with Dominic, it's a little bit like me blogging. I
Yeah.
write if I publish. If I don't publish, I can skip the writing, even though I know I love the writing. I know the writing serves me. I just don't do it. I don't apply myself. And the therapy feels a little bit the same. It's like, I know this is work worth doing, but I don't know if I could, or at least would do it if I wasn't doing it with somebody who is there, who spots me, who challenges me, who asks
Yeah.
me questions, who, draws from. It's like he's a big channeler. It's like when
Yeah.
I'm just all frigging confused, he finds some
Yeah.
little energy that's moving in this big ball of confusion and says, okay, what about this one? What's
Uh-huh.
there? How does
Mhm.
it feel? Go with that one. It's like, I don't know if I could or would do this without
I've
that.
I've gone long periods where I was not doing the work. So, I mean, sometimes a decade or longer in between. I have journals going back to when I was probably about, I think it was 26, which is where I discovered, when I first discovered depth journaling and Ira Progoff and Jung's disciple who invented some of the techniques I use, or first at least wrote them down, how exactly how to do them. The stepping stones, the dialogues, the whole thing, the depth journaling thing. And I've done that work at various points during my life, but you could probably add all of it up since 27. So that's over 30 years, right? You could add all of that up and it would probably not be even 2.5, 3 years worth. So it's been more recently, very recently, that I've been able to do this very consistently. And I think the only reason I've been doing it so consistently is partly because I've been involved in different creative communities online where others are doing somewhat similar work. You know, I encountered one individual, Anne Marie, in the Pro 2 workshop who was doing what she called AI, which was
Active imagination.
active imagination. Yeah, active imagining, which is basically what the Progoff refers to as the twilight journaling, twilight imagery, which is the technique I like to use the most. That's what I'm doing when I'm doing this work. I'm doing AI or twilight imagery. And so because she was doing it, I was like, oh yeah, I used to do that. And so I tried a few things and immediately realized how helpful it would be for the kinds of questions I was trying to answer for myself in the creative community at the time, in the workshop at the time. And that's just continued. So because there are others who do that sort of thing, I'm continuously reminded. And because I do write it all down, I find I have to write it down or it doesn't progress. And so in that way, it really, and that's why, my theme for this year is stepping stones. And that's part of why, because I've just realized how many different things about my work, all of my creative work, including the painting behind me, how many of these are like stepping stones where I know the next move. I can't see anything past that. And as long as I'm insisting I want to see the whole thing or I want to see even 2 steps in, I'm going to stand here doing nothing. So I have to take a step. And for me with the imagery, taking the step is writing it down. I'll get just so much of the image and it'll stall. And I think it may even be that it's pausing to let me write it down. So I write it down and then I get the next bit and then I write that down. And my Dominic is the journals, because I'll be stuck or not interested or whatever. And I can't find any motivation to write today or whatever. And I'll flip back through the journal or even grab an older volume and open it up. And I'll read something and be like, holy cow, I had no idea what that was when I wrote it, but I know what that is, because I've gotten more parts of the puzzle and I've been able to piece them together. And I hadn't thought about that thing back there. And now that I've looked at it again from here, it becomes that little bit of energy, that spark that reignites everything now. And I can go forward. And so that's been part of how I have found my way without a guide, I think, is that the journals are there as something I can go back to, so I can kind of be my own therapist in a way. I probably, maybe I could be doing the work differently, or I'm sure it would be different. It might be quicker if I had someone who could be like, how about this? How about that? But I don't know. Part of finding my own way is what gives me the energy to keep doing this, is that I'm doing it myself. Right. So, I don't think I want a partner in this, at least not now. I may later though. At some point I may.
Yeah. And I mean, you do have, maybe partner isn't the right word, but I mean, I and the others in the creative crew were definitely cheering you on from the sidelines, It's like, so you're not alone.
No, and sometimes people do make it either a comment or drop a question into the pool that's like, oh, yeah.
Precise.
Linda McLaughlin does that for me occasionally. Angela Tseng does that occasionally for me. You do it sometimes. Sometimes it's Matthew. I mean, sometimes it's Inma.
Yeah.
So you're right. There are times when people will ask a question or point something out, and I'll be like, oh, I hadn't thought of that way. That takes me in a different direction. Yeah. You're right.
And I don't, it's like quicker. I don't think that's the.
Yeah, and I'm not sure quicker matters anyway.
No, precisely. It's like, this is the work, and it, it's the work, period, kind of. But it would definitely be different, I'm guessing. But I also think it makes me happy that we are doing so much similar work, coming to the same issues, kind of, your version of it, my version of it, but the same, like at the bottom of it, it's kind of the same things that we're grappling with, which I'm guessing is part of the, what's it like to be human? What is that? So it's probably very a collective questions or collective wonderings, etc. But we're doing it in 2 different ways, and I'm guessing there's another gazillion ways to do it as well, which also is, that's one of the things that I hope and want, that whatever I put out into the world isn't viewed as prescriptive. You have to do this. Do step 1, step 2, step 3, but rather descriptive. I've done step 1, step 2, step 3. What would something like that look like for you? oh, I could do A, B, and C, taking inspiration from rather than
That's right.
saying, okay, I will do it exactly the same way. No, you won't, you know,
That's right.
because it isn't, like you say, we all have to find our own manual. Where's the switch for me? And those switches, they kind of move around.
Yeah,
So you
they
think you
definitely
know
do.
where they are, and then it's like, no switch anymore. It's like,
That's
okay.
right. That's right. That's right. Oops, she
Right?
found us. We have to move the switch.
Yeah. It is really like that. But I like that. I like that we are. This is the like we were speaking about last time, how there's the similarities of everything. All humans. We are a species. There's so much similarities. Otherwise, we wouldn't be a species. And at the same time, each and every one of us is a very unique little person, with our
Mhm,
onlyness
mhm.
thrown in. And so everybody can find, what's my path? Which also makes it so tricky with this aspect of like, what's the big world? Like, when
Yeah,
I don't play it small, when I play it big, what does
yeah.
that look like? Because I have a sense myself that a lot of my playing it small, besides being this, it's not safe to be me and you're not worthy. It's also the cultural norms. This is how we do it. That
Mhm.
if everybody with bunny ears, because not everybody is, but if the majority of people are playing it small, then that's how we do it. It's like, who
Mhm.
am I then? When I'm not worthy and it's not safe to be me, who am I then to play it big? I mean, that's the scary stuff. No, I think I'll just stay here. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but no, I won't.
There's an element of, well, I mean, I find that when I'm working with the interior parts, part of what, I can't remember the psychologist who came up with the whole IFS, who developed IFS. I can't remember his name. But he said that all the parts are welcome, and it's
Mm.
very important that all the parts be welcome. Otherwise, they won't come talk with you. They'll just stay hidden. And he said that it's also important to understand that all of them are doing work that you set them to do. Right? They're not running around in there doing whatever they want. They're interpreting your orders maybe in a way that you now don't feel like you still want. But the point is that they're doing work for you. And so it's important, he said, to express thanks and gratitude to them for doing the job they're doing, even as you plan to dismantle or take apart the job they're doing, right? And get them onto something else. And that's part of how that work goes when
Yeah.
you do that and use that methodology. That's what you're doing. You're dialoguing with the part to find out, what would happen if you stopped doing your job? And they'll tell you sometimes. And what would you rather do? What would you do instead? If you didn't have to do this job anymore, what would you do? And sometimes those answers are amazing as well. And sometimes the parts are very tired, very, very tired. They have been doing this. I mean, I'm 61. Some of these parts have been doing stuff for decades. The manager, when I encounter him, looks positively gray and translucent. He is so worn out. He's very, very tired. He's been doing this forever and doesn't like it. And neither do I.
Mm.
But, there we go. It's a habit. It's a thing we do. So my point is that almost all the parts are trying to keep us safe,
Yeah. Mm.
however that's defined. And so the social norms are part of that safe. We've been hurt probably in encounters, probably in childhood, that educated our interior world in a way that it's decided to, well, we're not going to have that happen again. And even in places where that's not even appropriate anymore in the adult world to be thinking that way, they're still thinking that way. Right. And so, that's part of what IFS does as well, is it encounters those things and brings them up to date. And, when you encounter a part and say to it, how old do you think I am? And when it says 6, and that's how long it's been doing this particular job for you, and it needs to be brought up to now, right? And so getting it up to date, still blurry,
Still
getting it up to
blurry.
date and getting it, there we go. Getting it up to date so that it now realizes that, I'm 61 now. I have kids that are, 5 times the age I was when I was 6, is also part of the work, and part of what sometimes shocks the part into realizing, oh wow, what? And then you can have a much more meaningful conversation with it. I don't know. And I think the layers go on forever.
Yeah,
I don't think
I
there's
think so
a
too.
bottom,
No, no, I
and I
don't think
don't
so
think the
either.
parts ever end either. I think you're making them faster than you can encounter them.
But one of my, for a year now, the edge is very, very apparent when I am coming up
Yeah.
against something that like you say, the orders I've given in the past is, don't go there. I start to yawn. I've said this before. I start to yawn, and I yawn incessantly. And, it's like, we can be speaking, me and Dominic. He asks something or I says something, and then there's a yawn. And it's like, okay, then I know. Okay, we are up
I'm
against the edge here.
I'm warm. I'm warm. Keep going.
I'm warm, precisely. So it's like, what is that thing? And it is such we are now starting to laugh kind of with this, because it's just, these yawns are just, it's like, can you stop being so freaking obvious already? It's like, it's so obvious now, it's like, we spot you. It's kind of like a kid that, puts their hands in front of their eyes and thinks that because I can't see you, you can't see me. It's like, yeah, I can. The yawn doesn't lull me to sleep anymore. It doesn't make me go, oh, okay, over here instead. It's like, okay. So it's like a telltale sign now that this is the way to go. But
yeah, instead of being a diversion, it's now the right. Like you said, now it's the directional. It's like, it's over here.
Yep, it is. And it's, it's like, it's interesting and fascinating and frustrating like hell, because it's like, can it, okay, now that we've gotten it, can it start to speak instead? Can it do something that would, help me more? But again, that's kind of, that's the little rational part of me that goes, can you please give me the manual so that I can just disassemble this yawning thing? That doesn't work. But the feeling I have when I go into the yawning, and I can yawn the biggest yawns, I get so tired. There is no energy. It's like, really, it is this lulling myself to sleep aspect. It is like, there's no movement that I want to make myself do there. So looking back, I can see how freaking effective this order of mine has been. It's like, man, it's done the job. Really, just, okay, shut down. Okay. Without me noticing it, without me being aware of it. And I had done therapy for half a year before the yawns really showed up on stage. And we were actually doing the session here at home for some reason or another. And we were sitting on the sofa. And all of a sudden, it's like in 5 minutes, I'm yawning 50 times. It's like, this is like this feels like hiccups, where you can't stop them. It's, it's like, and I'm not doing anything. I'm not making them happen, I believed, but I am, of course, because I'm asking questions that were just so on the edge. So on. And I had the sense, because when we were doing that session, the yawny, 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 and all of a sudden we came to some type of huge insight, and it stopped. And I thought, good, now we're done. Yawn, tick! I've done that thing now.
That's right. That's right.
A year later, it's still here.
Yeah.
It's like, I was not done. It is just, like you say, it is just a signal. Now it is a signal. Before, it was kind of a mechanism, a shutdown mechanism. Now it feels like it is a signal. I'm interpreting the mechanism as a signal instead, and I've kind of disabled the mechanism so that I don't fall asleep. So it is a signal.
But you still don't know how to move past into the whatever the other thing is.
Sometimes, it's like there are instances where we do, and I'm like, I am this. I think that what happened Monday with this realization of it's not safe to be me. You're messing with the microphone. It's not safe to be me, and I'm not worthy. This is where the edge is. So this has put a color, a shape, a form onto this edge behavior that hasn't really been there before, in a much more clear way now than before. Where else? So it'll be interesting to see what happens next time.
Yeah. See, for me, I know I'm close when, and my wife has been patient with me for 41 years with this. She knows that I'm at the edge when we move from the manager and different kinds of rational management of my behavior, and me being really kind of locked down that way, to freaking out, panic or anger or something else. And the IFS talks about this too. It's well described. They talk about how there are protector parts. First of all, there are injured parts or hidden parts. They are being hidden or protected by a protector part. It's some aspect of you that's busy trying to keep you from ever, the you that's sort of the awareness, the central awareness, from ever remembering this or encountering that. In the really dramatic stories in psychotherapy of people discovering a whole set of memories or a whole event in their past they had completely forgotten is kind of related to that. But, we do it in many, many ways, on many levels. It's not always as dramatic as that. But so those protector parts generally keep things very smooth, very placid. Things are going along just fine. They keep you dealing with things. But as you get either frustrated with that or bored with that, or you're doing like I'm doing, you're churning things up deliberately, you can get near an edge where they're like, he's about to find that thing. I can see he's about to find that thing. And then they enlist other parts. And those parts are, I can't remember what he called them, but I think of them as fire alarms or whatever. They're crazy makers. They show up and distract everybody away from what's going on. It's like a bird that comes thundering out of its nest and goes running across the ground, pretending to have a broken wing so that, you don't find the eggs. And it's like that. And so, but when I'm in the middle of one of those, I still don't realize all the time that, it's one of these. Instead, I'm completely in the thing. I'm blowing up flares and just like, I'm truly freaking out. I'm never gonna this is never gonna work. I'm gonna, I'm gonna get killed by it. I'm gonna get bombed. I'm gonna get die of this. And, it's just genuine panic. Flight or fight or flight, and this is the flight part sometimes, or the fight part. And it's literally one or the other. I either freak out like I gotta run away, or I freak out like I'm gonna I'm gonna kill everyone. It's one or the other. And so that for me, that's the indicator that I'm right at the edge. It's my yawning. And apparently in my case, it's such a typical response that it's well documented. The yawning, I haven't heard that one before or seen it or encountered it anywhere in any of the writing I've read. Um, but yeah, and the hard part is when you get near the edge, it's such unfamiliar territory. I mean, we're deliberately kept away from there, right? So with such unfamiliar territory that it's like we don't even know how to move. It's almost like, oh, I can walk around the rest of this and point out the furniture or the landscape to you and tell you what's what. Go back to anything I want anytime. But when I get into that area, it's almost like I can't even see, or like it's not even really a landscape anymore. It doesn't, the usual descriptors don't apply. And can I even move here? What does moving mean? Do I have a dream body in this space that I can move through it with? I mean, there just doesn't, the rules don't even seem to be there anymore. And it's like, that's how I realized that you're right. It's the edge. I'm about to move into a place that's not comfortably me, or at least I haven't got that well defined as me. There's a description in, Carlos Castaneda's books of, it's only mentioned in a couple of the books, and it changes how it's used in the books. But there's one description of it that I find so useful. He talks about the tonal and the nahual. And the tonal is all the stuff that us as humans have carefully defined and carefully measured out, and we can describe it perfectly. And so it's all very rational. And the nahual is described as everything else. And the nahual is huge, and the tonal is very small. And we constantly add to the tonal as we discover and understand new things. They become part of the tonal, and we can control them. And what I come to understand through reading the books, though it's not said this way in the books, is that creativity does not come from the tonal. Creativity comes from the nahual. It comes from the unknown. It comes from outside. And when you're at the edge, that may be another way of understanding what's going on. You're going outside of the rational and going into something else. A large part of what the best of the 7 books, in my view, is Journey to Ixtlan, is about the character learning to see. It's always in italics. And he has to learn first to stop the world. And what he's stopping is his understanding of the tonal. He's got to shut down his mind in a certain way, so it stops defining everything as this one way, so that the world can actually go ahead and be as it actually is, and he can re-encounter it again the way maybe he did as a baby when he didn't have a tonal yet, right? But do it as an adult, and then see how things are really all connected to each other. And maybe learn how to move through or use that world, the whole world. And that's, I think, part of what we're doing in the work is we're trying to find our way out of this very limiting way of seeing things into something else. So coming back to your description of you and your work and wishing there were words, wishing there was the manual.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, and you said, let's not be prescriptive, right? Let's be descriptive. But I just had this feeling like, ooh, I think there's a thing there. Just like I've had to give up understanding what some of the stuff I'm doing inside is, or what it means. And in many cases have to give up words in there too. I wonder if that's maybe part of what you're going to have to get into is, are there things you can do that don't have words or that you don't understand? Are the moves you have to make next ones that won't make sense? you won't understand them. You're not supposed to understand them. And part of what you're going to have to learn is how to move or do with no understanding. I don't know. It just feels like, it felt like a nice hard boundary for you that because you so much like to understand what is this for? Does this work? Right. Even your very important phrase, does this serve me? All of that is a form of analyzing,
Yeah.
even when it's a soft form. But so I don't know. I just throw that out as a thing that I just happen to see. It's like, that looks like a hard line.
Yeah,
And
Dominic challenged me the other day because I was saying that I have basically not been writing down the therapy sessions in the way that I have done for a long, long time, since December, or maybe even November, maybe even October. It's like, yeah, since October, maybe even. Now and again a little bit. Now and again I've jotted down some, like keywords or phrases and stuff, but not writing it down in the way that I have before. And I was telling him that I want to. And he said, well, maybe you shouldn't. And I went, what? It's like, what do you mean maybe I shouldn't? He's like, or if you write it down, what if you just write it down for you? And the shocker of that, because again, I am so used to doing things in a dependable way where what I see and perceive, I share. What if I don't? It's like, so yeah, what you're saying feel as if I am coming up, because it's again this, but how do I then do this work?
Right?
How do I then do this work?
What am I doing if I'm not actually figuring it out? Right.
Yeah, precisely.
What am I doing if I don't write it down? What if what good is it if I can't describe it?
Yeah. And I was just reading like page 56 of The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist this morning, and the entire book is about the left brain and the right brain, or the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And there was a few sentences where he basically says that the left brain is the tonal. It is this is where you have the words, where you have the definitions, where you have the things, where everything is well defined and understood, and it's a very mechanistic way of being. So, and the right is the nawal, the rest. It's like, and he wrote something along the lines of, things are out here in the nawal, in the right hemisphere of the brain, when it is new, when it is not understood, when there is a presence in here, there's a newness, there's a whatness to it. And then as you go along, as you start to figure out that, this is one of those things, when you remember it, boink, it plunks down into the tonal, into the left brain, where it's like, okay, yeah, now I know what this is.
Yes.
And yes, you're right. There is a large part of me that wants to be able to put words to explain, to bring things into the left or the tonal, because it feels easier. It feels safer.
Yes.
It is well defined. It is touchable in a way. It is, there's that.
It's tame now. It's like the
tame
tonal
now.
Yes. It's like the tonal is a farm, and then the nawal is the wild, where you hunt and gather.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And we're not comfortable with hunting and gathering because we can't depend on it.
Which is so funny, because we can depend on it.
Yes, we
because
can actually.
we can depend on it. It's like
Yes, we can.
it is, otherwise there would not be life on Earth. If we
Right.
couldn't depend on the wild to
That's right.
sustain us, there wouldn't
That's right.
be life.
That's
You
right.
know, we're the ones who live in this tamed world. The rest of the world doesn't, except for the things that we have tamed.
Yes. Right. Right. Yeah.
So
And
it's,
the taming,
yeah.
the taming is about predictability. That's what it's about. It's, we object to doing things the wild way because we can't be sure it'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there. We'll survive, or we won't, but it will certainly survive as a species, or maybe we won't. But it's nature going about its thing, right?
Yeah.
But we want it to be much more predictable than
Yeah.
that, and that's really what agriculture is meant to do.
Yeah.
It's meant to make it predictable.
Yeah.
And as an artist, you deal with this left brain, right brain thing all the time. And whether it's really, the different sides of the brain doing that doesn't really matter. What matters is that our experience of it is like that. Most artists I know talk about having to do something to tie up the left side, the verbal part of themselves, wherever that is. So we might as well call it the left as a form of a shorthand, right? They have to tie that up somehow in order to be able to draw.
Mm.
If you try to draw a face from the left side, what you do is you draw almond-shaped eyes and a triangle-shaped nose and a mouth that's a line that is a circle. And of course, that's not how people really look. And if you're going to draw a person realistically, the lines and things you draw don't mean anything individually. They're all goofy, weird shapes, right? And you have to really look and see what's really there. And looking at what's really there means suspending this, eyes and noses.
Yeah.
More to the point, it's, you have to stop thinking eye, nose, mouth. You have to give up
think the whole.
words.
Yes.
You have to give
The
up the words.
wholeness. Yeah.
Yeah. And once you give up the words, now you're just, and there are no words. Your hand is just doing it. Right. And what artists find is that in order to keep that freshness, they have to keep stepping out of the tonal in different ways. They step out of the left side different ways. So at first, everything's new and the medium is unfamiliar and it's struggle. And so it works. Then you master that particular medium. You get good at using the brush and the watercolors. And all of a sudden it's all predictable again. And nothing cool is happening. And so then you start using your non-dominant hand instead. And you do it that way for a while. And then your non-dominant hand gets good. And then and so it's exactly the same thing. It becomes part of your tonal, your left. And so you have to find something else to shake it up. And someone like Picasso spent his whole life doing things to deliberately continue to blow up or shake up how he did his art. And the fact that he was able and understood that he had to do this his entire life is part of why his work is so vivid and so powerful all the way to the end. Most artists eventually get to a place where they're producing the same kind of work for the rest of their life. And it's still lovely and everything and very much theirs, but it's not innovative or groundbreaking from a certain point in their career onward, generally. There are some exceptions. And Picasso's one of them. But that's the work. Again, we're back to this, right? The work is about how do you, I don't know, I kind of want to go to the wild to live. I would like, I was talking about this the other day. I've been spending my whole life as a farmer, and I really would rather be a hunter and gatherer. I'd be happier, me and my stick and a pouch over my head, and even as a kid, I would pretend, or I would pack a bag of things I might need in the woods, and I would put that on, and I would go out, right, as a 10-year-old with my stick and my little pocket knife and my, whatever else. And there's a part of me that still very much wants to do that in so many ways. So many ways.
Yeah. I'm reminded of My Ishmael, the third book in the series of Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. You haven't read them?
No.
They're good. My Ishmael is my favorite, but in it, he also speaks to this thing about the farmer and the agriculture and like hunter gathering thing. There's this little conversation between a farmer and a hunter-gatherer, where it's like, kind of trying to explain the virtues of the farming, why it is so relevant. And, they are just totally speaking across each other because they're just not meeting, because the hunter-gatherer says, well, if I come across a ripe apple tree, today there will be apples. But the farmer says, yeah, but if I have an apple orchard, and then you have the warehouses where you can store the apples, I can have an apple any day. Okay, but why would you want to? And it's like, well, maybe you want to. Maybe if you go out and you want to find a sweet potato in the ground, yes, says the hunter-gatherer, I will go out and I will see, and maybe I will find a sweet potato. Maybe I won't. Yeah, but if you really wanted one, you needed it. And the hunter-gatherer goes, well, I would find something else. It's like, I wouldn't have to starve because I would find another type of tuber, or I would come across a rabbit that I could snare, or, but what if you want rabbit meat every day? Why would I want rabbit meat every day? It's just this back and forth of the misunderstandings that is there, I think, also, especially if you don't zoom out, if you don't see the two, if you don't see the differences. And that's also one of the aspects of the left hemisphere, right hemisphere, as far as I've understood this. The right hemisphere is the one that sees the whole. The left hemisphere is the one that is in the nitty-gritty, the details, the mechanistic aspect. And both of them are vital. We need both.
We do.
But the right brain knows it needs the left. The left brain thinks it doesn't need the right.
I think you're right. I think that's the problem. The left brain also thinks it's superior.
Yes.
And it's not.
No. Precisely. They are. And we need it. That's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the left, or what we refer to as the left as humans, is one of the things that is, or maybe it's the summation of the things that make us uniquely human, make us a little different from most other creatures on Earth. I don't know if other animals on Earth have a left brain kind of thing.
Actually, the bifurcation of the neural system seems to be present in loads and loads of creatures. So there's something to it. So there's a bifurcation and there is some type of asymmetry. That seems to be, it's there. You find that wherever you find that. So there's something to it.
So I wonder how other animals on Earth experience that. Do they experience it differently than we do? Are they maybe in better balance than we are? Where one side doesn't think it's superior to the other. They just use them both and can pass back and forth evenly. More teamwork. Right? I wonder, is maybe the thing that makes us the creature we are and have us the impact we've had on the planet is the fact that our left thinks it's superior.
Yeah. Which is kind of the premise of the entire book of The Master and His Emissary, as far as I've understood from reading 56 pages. But, and I'm guessing that this is where what Matthew speaks about cognition being, a curse, not just a curse, of course, but that this thing where we so actively think and we so actively know about our tonal. Maybe that's the, it's like we are wanting to make that aspect of ourselves bigger and constantly put stuff in there so that we can understand them and this and that. And then scientism has kind of made the everything else worthless or not real or not worthy of our, there's no import to it. It's like, Yeah. Maybe that's that's the problem. Because it
Yeah,
is there.
yeah, yeah. The best scientists actually are very aware that science has a certain discipline and a certain boundary around it, because of the tools it gets to use or must use in order to make progress. And the best scientists are very aware that there are many things that are outside of science's purview. It's a misunderstanding, I think, on the part of ordinary folks and some scientists that science should be able to describe everything. No, no, it should not. And the best usually know that there's
Yeah.
vast areas of existence that really cannot be described or defined by science,
Yes.
at least not yet.
Well, precisely. And that is why science is one thing, scientism is
Yeah.
another. It's like when we
Yeah.
make it into a belief, when we
Yes.
make it into this is the way
Yes.
of the world, and we think that this is truth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
we
sounds like another way of trying to make things safe, and that curse that Matthew talks about, when we set out to farm, we create predictability and we can eat well now, maybe, right? And eat what we want when we want it. But we're also now tied down to the farm. I mean, and that's usually what the nomad is the most aware of when he looks at farmers. It's like they're stuck. They don't go anywhere. They miss that over there. They're not up in the mountains for the glory of the summer up there. And they're not down by the sea for the
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so that's the curse is the imprisoning aspect, being stuck in whatever with this thing that you've built that you can't let go of because it's how you eat. That's how you make your living. And that's true for so many things. Like, you get into a particular career path and now you're making a certain amount of income as a result, and you're kind of stuck now. Or you've got this way of thinking about things and you're stuck now. Or we have this way of defining and understanding ourselves, right? And we're stuck now because we put a boundary around it. It seems complete, that it looks like everything there is. And we sense that it's not, and we have a hunger for what's beyond, but we no longer remember how to get out. There's no door, right? The house has many rooms, but there's no door to the outside. And so finding that door again, or figuring out how to jump out a window is the work.
That is the work. I think that's the perfect conclusion to and you know what? This is our 5th conversation, Steve. I don't believe it. It's like, it
No, when you said it was the
surprises me
fifth, I
every
was like,
time. Yep.
yeah, when you said it was the fifth, I was like, wait, there's only been like 2 other ones happened there. Maybe this is number 3. It can't be number 5.
It is number
Wow.
5. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is such a treat to do this. And the episode 45 that is just released when we're speaking now, I wrote about how each of these, the 5s, not the 5 with you, but the 5s times 5,
Right. Sets.
how each of the sets, how each of them kind of take on their own color, shape, form, taste, flavor, smell, it's like, because we have been going deep into personal development and exploration and doing the inner work, that has been a red thread for us. And it's like, and there's been these red, or the common thread. We say in Sweden, we say röd tråd. It's the red thread. It's the common thread in English. It's like each of the sets has their own that we don't set out starting thinking this is what we will be speaking about. But looking back, I can see that, oh yeah, this is what we've been speaking about.
That's right. Without intending it and without necessarily
Yes.
even deliberately picking up where the prior conversation left off. It's just, this is a thing that has been important to the 2 of us together. And so it keeps coming up each time. Yeah.
And I love it. I think it's part of what makes this so fun for me is, again, we were speaking about in what will be episode 46 about comparison and contrast. It brings the contrast to this.
Yep.
When I compare it and see without judging, but just discerning the differences, it's the contrast between the 5 sets that for me makes up the richness of doing this thing this way. It's like, because there's the repetition, the 5s of each makes it, there's a body to it that makes me able to actually look at it and see that, okay, this is this thing, and this over here has slightly different, I really like that. But we will also be having our 3 session with 3
On
of the
Sunday.
5s and me and Caspian, and I'm really looking forward to that, to see
I'm looking forward to that too. Yeah,
what
because I haven't done one of those, so I have no idea how that will go. I'm just I'm confident and comfortable it will be wonderful, because I'm sure it will be. I don't know. It's myself and Inma and Reddy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know Reddy. Inma I'm somewhat more familiar with, but so I'm looking forward to that. Both a combination of, someone I already know and already have some simpatico with, and then someone who's new.
Yeah. Yeah. Reddy is he's such a fascinating person. I love him. Yeah. It's really, I look forward to it. I really, really look forward to it. So I wish you a lovely day.
And you as well. What's left of yours? The second half, I guess, right?
Well,
Of
yeah,
yours.
the second half, it's past noon now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Helena, for inviting me to do these. It's been a lovely opportunity, and I've learned a lot. I have many pages of notes from these, which I go back to occasionally. Again, like as always, go back and look at something and go, yes, that. I need that now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Brilliant. Well,
right.
take care. See you around.
Yep, definitely. Bye.